you start to get clients and you're excited that you have a business that's cooking. But then the next challenge is you're balancing really good clients with really bad clients and projects that you're not well suited for. The big problem with that is it drains you. Like more than anything, it's just so draining to have bad fit clients. And it doesn't mean that they're bad people or that even the personality fit isn't right, but maybe it's just not a project fit.
Welcome to the Web Design Business Podcast with your host, Josh Hall, helping you build a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hello, my web designer friends. It's so good to have you here for this episode, and it is an important one to tune into because I'm guessing if you have not already got to this place in your business, you will, and that is where you are just attracting not so great clients. You're getting leads that are often cheap. They may be just bad personality fits. They may just be time suckers and just energy drainers, people who are just not the most ideal fits. I'm guessing that, and I'd be willing to say, if you're anything like me, that you say yes to everything in the early days just to make money and just to get projects and just to build your network. But then you probably found out pretty quickly you want to start weeding out these bad fit leads, and you just want to focus on the really good clients who seem to be few and far between. That's exactly what we're going to dive into in this episode. I'm so excited to finally, on the podcast here, share the ins and outs of my client weed out process. I call it my funneling framework, but you could also dub this as a filter. The idea is to get the bad fit leads out of your realm before they even enter your world. You do not want to be doing discovery calls with bad fit leads. You don't want to be wasting your time. You just want to have filters in place and a funnel in place to get the really good leads. Now, I talked about this recently on my friend Kady Sandel's on her podcast, The Profitable Graphic Designer, although she serves web designers too. And I realized it dawned on me, I've talked about this on the podcast, but not officially. We haven't had like an official episode about it, but she had some really good questions and some insight and some ideas that we really got to dig into here with this idea of weeding out bad fit leads. And I'm so excited to share this conversation with you because it really dives into exactly how to do this for your business as well. Now, after this, if you're like, Josh, can you just like give me the system? Can you give me the page? Can you give me the scripts that you talk about? The answer is yes. I'm happy to do that. And I actually have my funneling framework for weeding out bad fit clients as a low ticket product. I've actually made it available. It's currently only $47 on my website, but for you, I'm giving you an extra special deal. I'm going to give this to you for $7. It includes a 20-minute training. It includes real-world examples of potential client pages like I show, and it's big part of my process. And then it also is going to include the email templates for questionable leads and qualified leads. We'll cover that here. All the details are below, so make sure you take advantage of this. Details are below. You'll also be able to find that for you at the show notes for this episode, which is going to be at joshhall.co/335. So go below to pick up that my funneling framework. That way you can it's a turnkey solution for you and your web design business, no matter what web design platform you use. And I really hope you enjoy this chat I had with Kady. Big thanks to her for allowing me to repurpose this for you. Let's talk about how to weed out those bad fit leads, shall we?
My first question for you is, why this topic? Like, why are you passionate about helping designers weeding out bad fit clients? Has that happened to you or in your community? Like, give us the why story.
Yeah, I think it's because it's the next step of like an evolution for both web designers and graphic designers too. So I will say, by way of preface, everything we talk about here exactly translates to graphic designers. Because the problem is when you get started in any design field, the initial challenge is just to get work and just to get clients, which is totally fine. That should be the first challenge. The next challenge is, how do I keep my business going and love it and enjoy it? And how do I start to actually get more good clients. Because what happens, everybody's story, and I can say this in full confidence because this is what happened to me. I think this probably happened to you. I remember you sharing your story on my podcast, and it happens to all designers I oversee. Is you start to get clients and you're excited that you have a business that's cooking. But then the next challenge is you're balancing really good clients with really bad clients and projects that you're not well suited for. The big problem with that is it drains you. Like more than anything, it's just so draining to have bad fit clients. And it doesn't mean that they're bad people or that even the personality fit isn't right, but maybe it's just not a project fit. Like it's just not a good fit for you. Maybe you're doing something that, like for web designers, maybe you're doing SEO or advanced coding, and that's just not your strong suit. And you could focus better on sales and marketing and copy and messaging and design and hire some of that out or not take on those types of projects. So I think that's why the why of it is it can lead to just draining you of your business. And that's a really dangerous place to be in, especially if you do it for months and months and years without effectively weeding out clients.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that it's not that those people are bad or that they're bad clients. It's just not the best fit for your business. And I can totally relate to that, as you mentioned, because I was charging $65 on Craigslist and whatnot. And I thought, oh, I'm getting all these bad clients. But at the end of the day, I don't think, and I can confidently say that I don't think it's them. It was me, the way I was running my business. And so I think that is something that's very common, as you mentioned, that at the beginning, we're always just trying to get any clients, like any work. And then we had to figure out who is like the best fit for what we offer.
That is such an important point, Kady, because you said it. A lot of it is actually the way you present yourself, both in pricing and messaging, but also like the onboarding sequences that you have set up. If you don't have any, definitely you need to get some to where you're guiding clients through what the experience should be like. Case in point, boundaries. One of the biggest problems I see for web designers is just plain old simple boundaries. They are getting calls and texts and communications from clients at any given time on Friday nights, over the weekends, whatever. And they're so frustrated with clients. But the reality is it was probably their fault because they didn't set any boundaries in the beginning. And I'm saying that because that's what I did too. I got very frustrated and started to resent some clients. And then it dawned on me, well, I never told them when to contact me. Like they don't know. And there's a time and place to where you could have a project management system like Basecamp, Asana, or whatever you're using. And clients could post in there anytime they want, but you don't need to be notified until your work hours. Like there's simple things like that take a bad client experience to a good client experience by just setting some boundaries and stuff. So, that's a big part of it, is to take some ownership of you setting the expectations and experience. But there's definitely a level before that, which is to maybe look at the personality fit, the industry fit, and the type of projects to make sure that's right too, before we even get to boundaries in the experience.
Yeah. So can you share some like common signs, or how we like to call it, red flags, that might indicate a potential client is a bad fit for your design business?
Pricing is the top that comes to mind. Every website designer, graphic designer, anyone in a service-based industry, you're going to get price shoppers. Like you're going to get the tire kickers, the people who are looking for the cheapest option around. And that's not a good way to have a profitable business. The only way to do cheap is to do it at scale. But nobody that I know wants that type of business. Even if you're doing templates and AI sites, it's like, I don't know. Does that sound awesome? Do you wake up and be like, I can't wait to do 10 AI sites today for $200? So that's number one, is you got to get the tire kickers out the door ideally. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. I'll just dive right into my favorite strategy that just completely revolutionized my business. I created a potential client page, and that helped me weed out the pricing issue. That also helped me weed out the types of clients I was attracting, by not only personality type, but also just business type. Like I was not suited for these $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 contracts with like enterprise style sites with big companies. I just wasn't a good fit for it. So even on paper, it would be like, whoa, a $30,000 project. that could sound really cool and it may be a known business in town or something. But the reality is, do I want to work on something for like 6 months and have to work with a board of people and have multiple levels to get through of revisions and changes? No, I'd rather work with a small business for 5 to 10,000 and do a website in a month and then get them on my maintenance plan. So that's part of it too, is to be able to know what you do, who you serve, and then you got to weed them out. So for me, I created a potential client page, which is what I sent people to after they went through my contact form. So, and well, I should say there's kind of two areas I sent people to. If they were questionable, like a questionable lead, I would send them to my potential client page, which was almost like a different version of my homepage. It just had a little bit more about me, the business, the type of projects we do, the clients we serve. And then it had my price ranges, which I did not have on the main part of my website. So you don't have to do it like this, but what worked for me is to get anyone through the contact form. And then if they were questionable, like I was wondering, maybe they are a tire kicker, then they would go to my potential client page that had my ranges. My ranges were starting at 2,500. That's like the floor. That's the starting point. 5,000 was the average price point for most of my projects. And then we did upwards of 10,000 to 15 plus for like higher end e-commerce sites and membership sites and stuff like that. That's what worked out really good for me, because if somebody came through the door and I'm like, I don't know about this person, nothing personal. They may be the $500 client. If they see that I start at $2,500, they're either going to be cool with that or they're not going to be cool with that. But then if I got a lead through the door that was pretty promising and it was like a really good referral, that's when I would go right into the proposal process. Because like if they were referred to me by a really good client, I don't want them to have to go through a funnel or a filter of mine. I just want to get on the phone and get a discovery call and then get going on an estimate, because they may want to move forward right away on like a $10,000 project. So that's the summary version of my process to weed out folks, is to have this, I call it a funnel, but you could call it a filter too. The term funnel just resonates with me because it's like all leads come through the top of the funnel, the big point. And then when they come to the bottom, you got to filter out from there. They either go potential client page if they're questionable, or qualified lead comes to me directly.
Yeah, I see it as a funnel as well. And it all comes from marketing, the way you present yourself and promote, and how you even send them to your website, and then the contact form and the page you mentioned. Now I just have a question about that page. How did you call it?
I call it potential client page.
Client page.
Not the most creative term. Yeah. A lot of my students have called it good fit pages. Any variety of like get started, or are we a good fit? Let's work together, that kind of thing. A good fit page is actually probably what I see mostly in my community, Web Designer Pro, if people choose something different than a potential client.
Yeah.
But I mean, the only reason I named it that is because I would, if I were to do it today, I would potentially say like a good fit page. But potential client made it really clear. Like if you're going to be a client, you're a lead right now. That's kind of where you're at. But yeah, anyone more creative could probably come up with a better term than that.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, what is the difference between a contact page and a potential client page? Because if you want to filter out the bad fit clients, wouldn't that be a way how you can do that through a contact page? If you can just clarify the difference. Because what we do in my branding agency, on a contact page, we have a lot of questions that, we ask them how long they have been in their business. We even state like the minimum pricing so that nobody can even contact us unless they believe that they're a good fit for us. You know what I mean?
And honestly, that's a fine strategy too. I mean, there's just, and this too, there's like so many ways to go about it. You could have a more advanced initial contact form. The problem that I had is I still had people come through my contact form elsewhere, or even different avenues that were interested. And I don't know if you've seen this, but there are some people who end up being really good clients that for whatever reason just don't want to start with a robust contact form. And I think one thing to consider too is a lot of people are price shopping, and a lot of people are doing that for multiple designers. So if they've already reached out to 10 people and they've filled out a form that takes, even just 10 or 15 minutes, they may be spending a couple hours before they even get to you. And then they're like, oh God, I just want to get going. So this is just what I did. And I personally like to have a fairly brief initial contact form that had a few fields. But then it allowed me to decide, do they need to go to see my ranges and to see what type of projects we do, or are we going to dive right into this potential 10 to 15, $1,000 project? So that was the difference for me, is the initial contact form was pretty brief. And then if they were a really good fit and we move forward, then it would be an official quote form. But I don't want everyone to get my quote form. That was honestly something I realized too, is I don't want a $200 client filling out my long quote form and then me reviewing it and going into a lot of details, and then come to find out they are not budging for $200 or $500. So it was basically contact form to get them through. We funnel out from there. Then if they're a qualified lead, then we go to quote, like actual quote form. And I found that conversions were much higher, and they were, more importantly, quality leads. Because I think a lot of people judge conversions on like proposals getting accepted, but they're doing it with bad leads. So it's almost a mute point. Like, I want to judge conversions off of really good projects that I want. So out of 10 people, I want to make sure, like, if I look at my proposals and 5 went through, but they were 5 really good clients out of 10, 50%. Not bad. Could be probably a little better for projects that I want, but that's not bad. But, if I'm getting 9 out of 10 clients moving forward, but they're mostly bad clients, it's not something to brag about, because you're just converting bad clients. So that's some of the why of that approach, at least, as to why.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that there are many different ways, and I feel like now I want to test your version, because we keep adding questions to our contact form to basically weed out the bad fit clients. In a sense of our pricing is, we are now getting even $30,000 projects and whatnot. And so we don't want people who cannot afford us to contact us, but we still would sometimes get those leads. And so we added to a contact form, like, how much money are you making in a different way, like what's your revenue and things like that. So now I feel that many people are not going to respond to that question when they don't even know who I am. And so they might just leave. But if we get them to the door to fill out a very simple, small contact form and then send them to another page, now I'm just thinking out loud on my podcast.
I love it. This is great. I would be such a fascinating case study for you, Kady, because you are where you are with your agency. There's just different ways to go about it. Neither way is right or wrong. It's just what suits you. The other aspect to the reason I liked this idea of a simple contact form initially too is, apart from the money aspect, it does give you a chance to look at the personality fit. And I think everyone's at the point now where it's just nice to work with people you want to work with. And there's nothing worse than getting bad personality fits through the door that are,
even if they can afford it, and you're but I don't want that.
If they can afford it, it's oh God, it's just such a pain in the ass. So it's that's the other aspect of it too, is the type of person. And again, you said it, you can weed out a lot of people with a contact form, like a more robust form, even in your messaging by way of referrals, the way you present yourself. But inevitably, people are going to get through the door. So it's not something I would not advise this strategy for somebody who's at scale, who's doing this a lot, but I was getting maybe 1 to 2 leads every week or two. So it was very manageable. But it is a little more intensive if you're physically, personally weeding out people. But I had a template that I based it off of, and we were ready to rock. So, it would be fascinating to see you, even if you tried it out for a couple months, because it's something that you could always turn on and turn off too. You could have, anyone could try it just to see if it helps.
And at this point in my business, I totally feel like that is something that I can test, because I don't think I would lose anything by doing it. So I totally feel like I can, try it. But okay, so and I just also want to share how we do it. So basically, our contact form is super complex, and not many people will, fill out the form. And so only people who are the most serious are going to fill out the form. And then we're going to send them an email asking them for a Zoom call that's up to 30 minutes. And again, we don't get many leads because it's very hard for them to fill out the whole form. And so do you ever talk to your clients or potential clients before you send them the proposal? If you can just like walk us through that funnel, how does that go?
Yeah. So again, for me, your leads come through the door and you're one of two types. You're questionable. So you go to the potential client page, or you're qualified. And then qualified folks would generally, it was probably 50-50 as to whether we would get on a phone call. Actually, I would say it's more 75%. I would try to get them to get a quote form first, which is my more robust form. So basically what I have in place is just a level back from you, Kady. Like instead of people getting that initially, they have to get to it one level back. I would generally try to get that first because you're covering a lot of information that you're going to spend a half an hour on a call getting. So like you don't want to go through all the details of basic company info and website size and main goal, or, main website aspects on a call. Ideally, you want a call to be efficient and getting like the weeds and the scope of the project is really the main purpose of a discovery call. So yeah, I would say like most of the time, quote form first, then a discovery call, because it'll save a lot of time. Side note, the one reason I loved having this funneled approach is when somebody does get to my get a quote form, they're already like working, they're already kind of in motion. So because they didn't get to that initially, I basically filtered them a little bit and said, okay, it looks like we might be a good fit to help you and you'd be a good fit for what we offer. Here's the quote form. So it almost puts them in a place because there's been a personal connection already. They spend a little more time, I've found, in those quote forms. I'm sure you've seen in yours, you probably get some janky answers or some 1-word or 2-word answers that are like, well, this isn't helpful at all. But if you can get them going a little bit, if they're a good fit, then that's the opportunity to get a really nice, robust quote form. And then if you do a discovery call, record it, take the transcript, they will likely fill in the rest of that quote form on answers that they didn't really, get to initially. So quote form, discovery call, that's like 50% of your website content right there, typically, or graphic design content. So yeah, that's just, that's what worked for me.
Yeah, I love that. And again, like I really like how we all have different approaches and different ways of either filtering people out or like getting clients in general. Now, I also want to mention that there is one question that helps me filter out like bad fit clients, and that is if they have a business plan that I will have access to. If they say no, most of the time, they're either not serious about building their business, they're just starting, they don't know anything yet, or you know what I mean? Like they don't have, even if it's a one-page business plan, that's totally fine. If they say no, most of the time is not the right fit. Or if they say yes, but it's not completed or something, then it's going to work.
Interesting.
That was one of my key questions.
Yeah. And that may be where too, like, I think your target demographic pretty well. If I wanted to work with you, I'd be nervous now because I don't have like an official business plan. I I call it a roadmap. It's like a vision for the next couple of years, but I don't know if that would constitute, I don't know. Would like a janky 101 type business plan work for you? Or do you look for something that's a little more established?
No. So for example, right now we are working with a health and wellness business that has its location here in Austin. And so it would be very strange and weird that they have a 20,000 square feet property without absolutely any business plan in mind, or at least their target audience or their location or competitor list or something. So, it's just like, it depends also like who you work with, because, I feel like we are mostly working on rebranding businesses, and most of the time, my target audience are product-based businesses, but whoever is in the health and wellness, we can help. And so I feel like they're already at some scale where they're either rebranding or trying to grow their business. They're not just starting. But again, it depends on who people want to work with and really knowing who the target audience is.
Yeah. And you could weed out people with simple messaging that says like, we help experienced brand or established brands get a new online presence or whatever it is. That way you could essentially weed out startups. So there's so many ways to go about it. I think the most important thing when it comes to this idea of weeding out or filtering or funneling is that not all leads are equal. And it sounds mean, but it's not personal. It's not based off of a personal thing. It's just there are people who are not a good fit for you, and we as an agency or we as a studio or even a freelancer are not good fit for certain businesses. There's nothing wrong with that. So it's almost like a duty of designers to have a good filtering process, a funneling process. Obviously, I'm sharing what I did and what has worked and what works for a lot of my students. But I have students who have your approach too, Kady. They'll have a longer quote form, or some of my students actually have like a paid discovery. Or one of my students, April, has a like to get her price fit guide, which is essentially her potential client page. You have to sign up for her email, like you have to request it. So that's an option as well.
I love that, because then she's collecting email addresses that she can send like newsletter every Tuesday and Thursday, for example, and kind of like,
which you could do with the contact form too. Like for our contact form, we have the email address. You could just have a disclaimer. If you fill out our contact form, you'll be added to our, initial, maybe monthly newsletter. That's just a chance to help, teach and educate and empower potential clients too. Even if they're not a great fit yet, maybe they will be eventually after learning from you or seeing your work for 6 months or a year. So that's always an option too. Yeah. Is to use your contact form, a simple one to lead them through. And then if you get a quote form, that's the advanced one. That's when you can really track conversions, because you could say like, okay, 100 people have filled out this get a quote form. If we have 50 clients, again, 50%, we've got 50 other clients who may still be qualified. Maybe they moved on, or maybe they will eventually work with us. So either way, the idea that not all leads are equal, again, generally comes like a level back from in the beginning. You just want clients, and then you realize, okay, I don't want all clients. I don't want anyone and everyone. I want like the good ones again. I want the A clients, the really good ones that are good people to work with, have a budget, give me content on time. Yeah, your ideal personality fits and ideal customer avatars. That's who you want.
Yeah, definitely. And I also mentioned the specialization or niching because we work with health and wellness businesses most of the time. And that is because I worked with a lot of like CPAs and lawyers, and that just wasn't the right fit. That doesn't mean that they didn't have the money. They definitely did. That doesn't mean that they were bad people. They were amazing people, but it's just not something I wanted to work on. So that's
a really good point.
I think that's another way of filtering them out. Just like add the words to your website. I mean, it's all about content, right?
Yeah, that would already make them like somewhat qualified, just being in the right industry. I was a generalist, so I worked with anyone and everyone industry wise. But my thing was more filtering out by personality type and by type of business, in the way of like how big they were, how established they were. I was not ideal for startups. I was not ideal for mom and pop, like, pizza shop kind of things. But I was ideal for like a local business in Columbus, Ohio, who is maybe doing $1 million or $2 or $3 million. Was like the small to medium sized business was perfect for me. And I actually said, I serve small to medium sized businesses. I wasn't ideal for nonprofits, worked with some of those, had some good and terrible experiences. I just said small to medium sized businesses. So we've kind of talked about that before too. It's like you can kind of semi niche or semi niche by just saying, even if you're not like me, I wasn't hyper focused, but I did have good clients, small to medium sized businesses. So I just said that, and that helped get the startups out of the way. That helped get the big enterprise clients too. So that worked out. Yeah, that worked out as well. A lot of different layers to filter.
I was just about to say there's so many different ways we can filter like bad fit clients, but how do we get a good fit clients? So, many designers struggle, whether brand, graphic, or web designers. I feel like it's all the same, right?
Oh,
so
sure.
Many designers struggle with attracting quality clients. So what advice do you have for them to attract maybe either higher paying or like just a better fit for them?
The truth is, I've found that good people surround themselves with good people often. So in any sort of networking or marketing or whatever you're doing to get leads, because before you get clients, you got to get leads. My top recommendation is to just find where they hang out And this is easier said than done. And of course, there's always bad apples or not great personality fits in any group or networking event or chamber of commerce or whatever it is. But if you happen to find one really good person and they become a client, I would remind everyone, I hate to say it, like milk them for everything they're worth, but like focus on them to be your referral partner, because they are likely going to know a lot of other good people. And the same is true in the community world. The same is true for business organizations. Good people refer other people. And I think good people, good clients tend to be a little more selective too on who they refer out. So if you are a good referral partner for a really good client who has a budget, who's really good to work with, who's organized and is well connected, that's like, you could almost do no other marketing. You could just be good friends and offer as much value as you can with a few people like that. And that's your network. Like, I say that because that's literally how I built my web design business. I did not do any social media marketing, no wild online content or anything. I built my business through networking and just personal relationships. And I learned that a few good clients is all you need to build that network. So I think that's really important because not too many people talk about that. Most people talk about leads and exposure and visibility, and all those things are important, especially in the beginning, just to get your name out there and to get people aware of you. But I would encourage everyone to really stop and think and recognize when you have a good client, they are your sales force for really good clients. You could totally join groups that are specific to the right niche you're in and even personality fit, whatever that looks like. But yeah, don't neglect those really good clients because they're the gold mines typically.
Yeah. And when you talk about networking events, did you go to networking events in person, or that was maybe through LinkedIn? Or I know you mentioned you didn't post content necessarily on social media to attract clients, but was it maybe connecting with people, or how did that work? How did you get clients?
Most of my clients, the majority of my clients came from my networking group, which was a referral group. It was very similar to BNI. If anyone's not familiar, which there's a big key difference between networking and referral groups. Networking groups or networking events are places to just meet people, which are great. And I would recommend it. I know you were big into that when you moved to the States, right? You're outgoing. So went to a bunch of networking events. Yeah, which is great. Like, absolutely. The cool thing is for introverts, you don't need to do that long. You can get your name out there and you'll be shocked if you do a good job at how far, a few months of networking can go. But there's a difference between networking events, which are just meet people, build connections, and then referral groups. Referral groups are, you pay to be there. They're typically smaller. And again, BNI is the most popular one that is global. A lot of my members are in it right now. And what they found is you become the web designer for not only that group, but all of their network too, if they don't know a web designer. And that's exactly how it worked for me. My group fluctuated anywhere between 15 and 25 to 30 members at any given time. And there were some other people who did similar services. Like we had a social media guy at one point, a marketer. I had a videographer who was one of my top referrals and lead partners. And then there were real estate agents, chiropractors, automotive folks. Some of them became my paying clients, but the true value for networking for me was that they were my sales force. But again, it was a difference because we were a referral group. The goal is to give each other referrals. And that's the beauty about those. It's like when you join a referral group, people are trying to get you business, just like you should hopefully be trying to get them business. So just like anything, the more you give, the more you get. And yeah, if you're a connector and you're getting people business, they will think about you. And the power of being like the designer or the web designer for even 20 or 30 people, that just exposes you to like 2,000 people, just like that. So yeah, that's how literally I built my business was mainly through my networking group and then my just personal network and my professional network leading up to that.
Yeah, I love that. I was a part of a BNI for a year as well, and I definitely got some clients from that. But also, it's not even just about clients. I also met people who later on helped me with some contracts. So for example, I met one attorney who helped me to figure out my contracts because I was like, I don't know. And then also I stayed in contact with some of those people, even after that group fell apart because they sold the space or something like that. it wasn't like anything that group wasn't working. It's just our space disappeared and then we never formed another one. And so, even these days, like I'm still getting like referrals from that group of people because I stayed in contact with them. Mm-hmm. And then, they can connect you with someone else and someone else. And that is what we always hear from business coaches, like, oh, just get clients through referral. And I'm like, but where do we start from? How do we get those referrals? It's always like, oh, I get all my clients through like word of mouth. Okay, cool. But if you don't know many people, then
exactly,
where is the starting point?
Yeah, and I think I feel like that's a realtor kind of thing, which is really common because most realtors are going to have a ton of people in their network and stuff. For creatives and designers, you're right. That's the level back, but that's also why I think starting in a networking group is one of the easiest. It's actually, I would go out to say it is the easiest way to get started with like a professional business group, because outside of just telling your friends and family and people who are around you that you do web design now, for example, you got to get visibility somehow. And I'm totally fine with folks doing content creation for social media or YouTube or whatever that looks like. There's a ton of strategies. You could go on Upwork, you could go on Fiverr. There's meetups for any amount of platforms or tools that we use. There's online communities. There's all these different things you can do. But when you join a networking group or a referral group and you're the web designer, or even if you just join the local chamber of commerce, you're immediately on a directory as a web designer. You will get leads like that too. There's something that's so powerful about just embracing the role of like, yeah, I'm the web designer for this group, this region. And it's just, I think it's the quickest ROI, return on investment, and on time for getting leads. And I really stress it now more than ever, because in the wake of the last few years, in person is so much more valuable and so much more impactful now. I actually have a student, Kady, who is in the UK, and her business was, quite frankly, just kind of sputtering along. She had a few good months and then some really bad months. And she was doing a lot of online stuff, posting content, which did work out in her favor eventually. But that is a long-term, slow burn, delayed gratification game, the content game. She was posting reels on Instagram and blogs, and it just wasn't doing that much traction for her. And then she even told me, she came on my podcast and talked about this. Katie Lake is her name. If anyone wants to go back to that episode, from scarce to swamped is what I called it, because she literally in the span of a few months told me, I'm like hurting for business. I need to figure out something. She started going to in-person events and networking events, and she's real charismatic and personable. And she was used to be in the wedding industry, so she knew a lot of people who were like business owners and stuff. And then the next update I got from her is that she was completely swamped, and it was like, flip of a switch, and it was networking. And I think that just speaks to the power of in-person events, in-person networking. And again, I'll stress, it's not something that you need to do all the time. But man, is it powerful. And if we want to get back to the filtering idea, there is no better way to filter somebody than meeting them and being like, I don't want to work with this guy. So I'm not even giving him my business card. Now imagine if he went through your contact form and then you had a discovery call and then a quote, and then you find out later, no, it's like, you can really weed out people, and business owners who want a designer. If you meet them in person and they like you and they trust you, and then they go to your website and see, oh, he has a blog, like he actually knows what he's talking about. Or now I follow you on social media and oh, now I see these reels. Like the content marketing side of things online is more of an authority builder in my mind when it comes to marketing. I don't know if that's the best first impression type thing. That's a good, like somebody meets you and is interested, then they go to your website, then they go to your socials, and then they see that, wow, like Josh has some resources here. He knows what he's talking about. That will likely seal the deal. But the in-person stuff, yeah, I'm sorry. I think I derailed us, but that's why I love networking. And I think we really need to stress the difference between a referral group that you pay to be there. We're all about referrals. We're going to be cool. We're going to be friends. But at the end of the day, referrals versus like a networking event.
Yeah. And basically that referral group is like a B2B, because all those people that are going to be at the referral most of the time, right? They're all business owners, or maybe they work for another business. Maybe they do marketing, or they're even salespeople, but they're always going to try to send you business because they know that they will get it back.
And you said it a little bit ago, like they become your network. You start to use them over and over. I found the same thing. My real estate agent, who's we've bought a house from her. We built a house with her. My financial advisor, my insurance guy, my mechanic, all came through my group. And still to this day, years later, I joined that group in 2012. So 12 years later, they're still my core. Like they're my people in these professional industries. And most importantly, when they become like your network, you stay top of mind with them. So my financial advisor, guess who she works with? Businesses and business owners. My insurance guy, guess who he works with? People who own businesses and entrepreneurs. My realtor meets people who are in business for themselves. Like it's amazing just by being in a network with people, how top of mind you stay. You didn't have to do a newsletter, didn't have to post reels, you didn't have to do content creation. You're just continually in their mind because they're just a part of your network. That's another little like hidden way to get clients there is by just having people in your networking group, like be your crew.
Exactly. I also feel like it's really good to know those people. And I love that you mentioned realtor because we did the same thing. I was working with a realtor that I met at the BNI group. And then when we had an office space and I wanted to sell the office space, I reached out to that realtor and she's like, oh, well, actually, I don't do commercial real estate. So let me connect you with this guy. And it was like, okay, cool. So he knows a bunch of business owners as well, because either they have a space or they are renting or, you know what I mean? So it's just like very good to be connected with other business owners or people who are in the business world. And especially that, like knowing them in person is so important. But I also want to touch base a little bit about like the introverts or people who live in smaller towns or in suburbs and don't have that access to, I'm here in Austin, Texas. We have a lot of events, like South by Southwest is now coming up and like so many events that I can go to. But what would you suggest to designers who maybe the only option that they have is online? Is it maybe LinkedIn? Because that is a B2B platform.
Yeah, I would start with LinkedIn. If I was in a rural location, if you're stateside, you should be able to drive almost anywhere, maybe not every day or weekly, but there should be something fairly close by to where you could make it once a month or something to an event. Or even small towns, you become the web designer for a small town. They all have their extended networks. And I always stress web designers in particular, we don't need that many clients. You could build a 6-figure business with a couple dozen clients if you really wanted to, even less if you're depending on what you're doing. So you don't need that many people. I think that's something that holds people back when it doesn't need to. If you're in a small town, start there. Start in the small town. I guarantee you'll win in SEO if you do anything SEO related on a small town, and then you kind of expand from there. So I would start there simply. Online though, absolutely. LinkedIn is, I think, a hidden gem for service providers online because it is just that. It is a business to business style environment. It is networking. It's about business. So I think that's a really good place to go. If you're also doing anything online, YouTube is continuing to grow. YouTube is continuing to, if not, I don't want to say it's going to trump basic SEO, but it is such an integral part to SEO now, had to have video. Most web designers, most graphic designers, most content creators are not utilizing video in YouTube. If they're doing video, it's likely on social media, which doesn't come up on SEO. Barely, or you have to log in. It's not an SEO thing. So there's a ton of opportunity for that. Side note, one of my good colleagues, Sarah, she's in Australia. She has a fascinating way on how she grew her web design agency because she did it through graphic design SEO. So what she realized is that graphic designers aren't too worried about SEO in most cases. Like web designers are going to be more prone to that, but graphic designers, usually not something they're capitalizing on. But she partnered with a graphic designer because she did web design and graphic design. And she was like, no one's doing graphic design SEO stuff, but then that all leads to web design services. So she SEO'd the heck out of their graphic design services for different rural locations and bigger cities in Australia. And that's her entry point. That's like her main source of lead generation is graphic design SEO. And then that gets them through the door. Then they do branding. And then guess what they want after they have design and branding? A website. So that's another way to do it. Yeah. Online, there's a few different strategies, but LinkedIn, YouTube, kind of hyper niche or long tail type of SEO is a really good way to go, apart from joining communities and building your network online, which is why I have a community, why you have a community. Like that's why that's extra beneficial as too, especially for folks in countries where not only is it rural, but it's like their ideal clients are not even in their country. So they're not going to literally meet people anywhere.
Yeah. So now I feel like I have a lot of questions for you. I'm just like taking notes. So the first one is you mentioned long-term like keywords and SEO and all of that. And I just wanted to add that is how we are getting clients as well. We do write blogs and I know that it's very competitive and it's very hard to stand out. And even though we are working a lot on SEO, sometimes it just doesn't work. But what's working for my branding agency is those long terms. It's not just like, oh, website design for small business owners and then like tips and tricks, because it's going to be very hard to rank like that. So either you have to mention the location or a specific niche, or it has to be something else than just generic, right?
Yeah. And that approach too, this is something I wanted to make sure we hit on at some point, which is just because there's a lot of competition doesn't mean that you can't stand out. So in the SEO world, yeah, you're exactly right, Kady. It's like, you just got to figure out what is a little bit different or what is not that common. Like in my case for Sarah, she realized there's a ton of cities and there's barely any graphic design like competition here. It may be different now, maybe different for big cities, but you could still do different types of posts that are going to come up. The other thing to remember too is I think about like realtors, because a lot of web designers have recently asked me, there's so many web designers. Does anyone stand a chance getting started today with so much competition? I often think about realtors because I have met, and maybe I'll ask you, like, how many realtors have you met in your lifetime? Probably a lot.
A lot.
How many, tell me honestly, how many realtors are just awesome that you would love to work with out of how many hundreds you may have met, or thousands?
Two.
I have one. I don't even have two. I have one realtor who has been with us.
I have one that does a commercial side and then one that's, on the other side. So basically, yes, it's one. It's one.
It's one. Same thing for web designers and graphic designers. The cool thing about being a graphic designer in particular is graphic designers are typically extremely flaky. So if you are just not flaky, you'll stay in business for as long as you want. Like if you just show up on time and you can, even if you just use Canva, you'll be fine. So I say that to help everyone who's worried about the amount of competition. It's like, there's a whole lot of competition, sure, but it doesn't mean that they're good or that they're good fits for clients, or even if they're a really good designer or developer, maybe they're just a freaking jerk and no one wants to work with them. That's the case with a lot of realtors. There's so many broster, like jock realtors that I know. And I'm like, I would never want to work with you. I don't think you'll email me back. I don't think there'll be even punctuations in your email. I don't think it would be a good experience. So like our realtor was in my networking group and she's a sweetheart and she's super professional. She's amazing. She's like a family friend now. And again, I've met probably thousands of realtors and one is who I trust. Same thing for designers. That's the same way clients view that. You can be the one.
And you will be the one if you know who you need to target and who you need to talk to. You also mentioned building a 6-figure business with like less clients. So that sounds like a positioning to me. So if you can just tell us, like, how can design business owners maybe like position themselves as experts in their field to attract the right clients? Because when they go to networking events, they're going to meet a lot of people and others are going to meet, a a lot of web designers or brand designers. So how can they make sure that people are going to choose them?
As far as being viewed as an expert, just share what you know in any way possible. This is where like the blogging and the I would do YouTube over social media any day if I were starting today in web design, because you can have an archive in a channel, even if you don't have to be a quote unquote YouTuber or an influencer or something, but you could have a dozen videos. And I say this because this is exactly what I did. I had a client resources page with a dozen videos sharing what I knew about the tools we use and how to use Google Analytics, how to look at conversions, how to help traffic, how to market your business and use your website. And I was never an expert at any of those subjects, but I just shared what I knew. And especially back then, I didn't know that much, but I knew way more than, my automotive guy. He didn't even barely know what a website was. So, like you can feel like an imposter if you look at other designers, but if you are the best web designer and the people around you, business owners, you're the expert and you don't even have to barely do anything. But definitely just share what you know. And you could do that by creating YouTube videos and then put them on your site. And those could be also blog posts. Essentially, you could make a little video you don't even have to be on video. You could do a screen recording, sharing what you learn. I have a student, Sam, who really likes local SEO, and he's becoming known for he's like the local SEO guy in Oregon. That's where he's from. He's only been in business for a year. And in January 2024, he just had his first $13,000 month. Now, he is the exception because he has worked really hard and he went full time. He went for it. He's had a lot of slow months and a lot of growing pains, but it's clicking for him less than a year in. And it's because he's had a focus on what he does best, design and local SEO. That's his thing. And he's using YouTube and he's getting found now through YouTube. So, he was posting content a few months in just based off of what he was learning from my courses and my community, but that made him an expert almost overnight because he knows way more than, the barbershop owner who it doesn't understand what anything is. And she shouldn't. She should focus on her business. And we should focus on the website, the online presence. So, any type of content creation, blogs, YouTube, Reels, if you choose to go that way. I would also say, if you have a chance to do a training or a workshop or a webinar for people, that's another amazing undervalued approach to being an expert and being an authority, is doing that kind of thing. And that's what we did in my networking group. Every week, we would have one of the members do a training on something. It could be super simple, could be 10, 15 minutes. And I learned how to present just off of little topics, and those would always get me clients. And then one of my clients was a business coach for other businesses. And then they brought me in to do a training on security for websites. And that immediately got me in the door with a ton of other businesses just because they viewed me as an expert. I was not an expert in security, but I knew more than they did. And, that's just another avenue for getting clients. And going back to the filtering, the quality thing, the funneling clients, they were qualified clients because they were all business owners under the same program. So I could keep going, but yeah, do a training or a workshop for your clients.
Yes, I was just about to ask about YouTube because just today, someone left a comment on one of my posts on Instagram, how they never know what to talk about. Either it's social media or YouTube or blog or whatever it is, because they don't have as many clients to share their designs. So what would you suggest that they should talk about? What should their topics be, for example, for YouTube videos?
It would help if you knew your ideal type of clients. The other problem I see with web designers, this can actually create leads, but not always the best leads, is they may do tutorials on WordPress, for example. But if you do a WordPress tutorial, you're probably going to get other people using WordPress. You're going to get DIYers, or you're going to get web designers interested in that content. Now that can create leads. When I started my YouTube channel, I did mainly WordPress and Divi tutorials at the start, and I actually got some fairly good clients through that. They were mostly people who were DIYers trying to figure Divi out themselves. And they were like, screw it. This Josh guy has a lot of tutorials. I like this stuff. I just want to have him do it. And I didn't have to sell at all. I just had to give them the price and they were in. So that is an option. However, I would create content that is more about growing somebody's local business. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. We live in the world of AI, so you could chat GPT 100 different content ideas, and there you go. You're probably set for a couple of years. The other thing you could do is, as you do start to get clients or you're fielding questions from people who need a website, your FAQ section. Your FAQ section is a gold mine of content creation. So those are a couple ideas. When you're in networking events and referral groups, you will be shocked at how many content ideas you can pull from that, because they have no idea, what they're doing, and they'll give you the questions and the content. So yeah, you're right. In the beginning, you may not have real world experience yet, but it doesn't take long before you'll get plenty of questions. I mean, go to 2 networking events and you'll probably have 50 questions worth of content that you could push out, and just recirculate that content, and however you want to do it, blog, YouTube, reels, whatever that is, SEO workshops, whatever, just continue to harp on those. But I would make it more business centric. Like, for example, Google is about to roll out their new AI search initiative, which is generative search experience. So things are going to look a lot different on Google here soon. The beta version is out right now, and it still acts as like a typical Google search, but it goes further into how AI is interacting with a search, and it's more guided. So there's a bunch of content opportunities that you could just learn about what's going on with Google's AI stuff. And as updates come up, you could post content about that to help local businesses with the new AI search, especially for local brick and mortar businesses. It's going to change quite a bit. So that's what I'm doing with a lot of my members in Pro. Nobody is an expert on this right now because it's not out yet. So we're just sharing what we know, but that immediately places you as like an expert and an authority just by doing that.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like we covered absolutely everything in this podcast episode, but we also start from the end, like filtering, like working with clients, filtering bad fit clients, how to get leads, content creation, like literally from the ad to the beginning.
Yeah, I was going to say we went backwards, right? Like we started with really getting really good clients and then worked backwards to how to start finding clients. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the heck you label this episode, because we did cover a lot, but
right.
It's all really important stuff. Even those who are more advanced, everyone's still looking at ways to get their best clients. And I think when it comes to creating content and networking in person or getting clients online, there's just so many ways to go about it. But I hope some of the principles we covered here and strategies will help make it pretty tactile for people to get going on.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Josh, so much for being my guest again. And I can't wait to talk to you next year again.
I know, right? I'm super pumped. Well, you're coming back on my show. So we're just going to keep on podcast swapping once a year. It'll just get better and better.
I love that.
There you are, my friends. I hope this sheds some light on some strategies that are proven. These are the things that I actually did and that a lot of my students, hundreds of my students now are doing. And it was a big game-changing point in my career, was finally stop doing these freaking terrible long calls with bad fit leads. And this is how to do it. Leads are qualified or they're questionable. And you got to have your systems in place. If you would like my system, I'm giving it to you for $7. That is a couple coffees in most coffee shops. That is one frou-frou fancy drink from Starbucks. This will save you hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of your time moving forward. So how much do you value your time? Is it worth $7 to get my system to implement for you? It's ready for you. Go to joshhall.co/335 to get all the show notes for this episode and that little funneling framework that I have ready for you to dive in. So there you go. I can't wait to hear from you on how it helps you out. And if you have any weed out strategies of your own, I'd love to hear them. I'm sure Kady would too. You can leave us a comment for the show notes for this podcast episode at joshhall.co/335. All right, friends, thanks for joining. I hope you pick up my funneling framework to help you in your web design business. And cheers to weeding out these bad fit leads, bad fit clients, so you can focus on the awesome ones and just love your business. I mean, I keep on going back to this over and over. I want you to love your business, and a large part of that is enjoying who you work with. So cheers. I hope this helped. I would love to hear from you. I'll see you over at the show notes, joshhall.co/335.